People always asking me all these damn questions, and they so confused. I don't know what to tell them. Why he do this? Why he do that? How you do this? How you do that? Hell yeah, I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats with A's. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face. Cause
people always ask me all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
They wanna know my play-by-play.
Hey,
Yeah.
welcome back. Objectively Aggressive Podcast presents the Lighthouse Series, Season 4, Episode 5, Incitement. Yeah, man, that's a lot. It's like I practiced it or something.
I like it, bro. Hey, it's getting smoother. It's getting smoother.
The rough edges are being, polished off, man. Welcome back, Dr. Ham. What's good with you? Quick update. How you living? I know you just chilling, right?
Man, once again, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your platform. Always a pleasure. But like I say, I'm learning I'm finding that the older I get, man, the more meaningful I want my time to be. The more meaningful I want my time to be, and I'm learning how to do that now.
Yeah.
I'm learning how to I'm learning how to put the phone down and be like, you know what? No phone day. Just chill with the kid day. So I've been trying to do that, man, and maximizing my times, man. That's me.
No, man, that's beautiful. I too have been learning how to do that, because you find that sometimes you want to be a part of a space, but sometimes that space is not necessarily ready for you.
That's fair.
Even if they want you there. So with that,
that's fair.
But that's I'm finding that. That's what I'm truly finding in this journey. Even with this disclaimer, like this is a disclaimer, like we're going to talk about a lot of different things, and it's going to get very high, and it can, we're going to try not to vibrate low, but we're going to hit some subjects that could, maybe hit in the events of the day, but we just want you to know we're here to kick it like we're in a barbershop or whatnot. And I only say that just to say, hey, the way that this flows is going to go all over the place. So we're going to try to have this flow. And so with the flow, the way we go is we're talking incitement, and incitement gives us excitement because, incitement leads to cognitive dissonance, in my opinion. Being able to tap into a mind frame, it takes a higher level of understanding psychological thought to be able to tap into incitement and get a group of people, right? But it's not as hard as people think, because once groupthink is already a factor, you can easily tap into the moral foundations of a group and incite them into certain things depending on your power source and the leverage you have, right? Especially at what I would call a 3D level, because at the 3D level of consciousness, you will find inclusion, and that's the tribalism, and that's where people want to fit in. And that, from a scientific standpoint, I don't, not to nerd out, but this is where we find normal standard distribution, where that bell curve is, and right there at the top of the bell curve, people think that's where they want to be because that's where they average out. That just makes you average. And so being able to be incited, I would say you would be an average mind. But I hate to take that far, but go ahead, Doc.
And so it just, you know how we are, man. We put it out there without the polish, and then we polish it as we go. And I think that's how ideas are supposed to work. We put it out there, because I will say that what I'm seeing from what prism or from what vantage or perspective would you want to see it from? Because when you operate at a higher frequency, it's easier for you to go to a lower frequency than for somebody at a lower frequency to come to a higher frequency. Meaning, in the form of incitement or riot, those who are up here can easily cause those here incitement quicker because they can punctuate the equilibrium quicker. How? Because they can distort first. And anyone who can distort first, because the person who tells a story first appears to be right until someone else comes along with the truth. And I think incitement, it's Voltaire, has a very powerful quote. He says, anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Let me say it one more time. Anyone who can make you believe an absurdity can make you commit an atrocity. So what that means is incitement comes from absurdity, meaning the absurd is that your election was stolen from you. Absurd. The courts have said it's absurd. The states have said it's absurd. The Republicans have said it's absurd. So the person who's making you believe the absurdity will make you commit the atrocity. January 6th. That's the atrocity. So the incitement is the atrocity.
I would say from understanding it,
and I don't mean atrocity in a negative equilibrium. So if you understand what I mean when I say atrocity.
No, listen, I'm with you, right? And so I would agree with, if I were to take the same concept that you're talking about and explain it in a different way, right? Yes. And so there's a duality to life.
Yes.
Right. And so there's a physical one and there's a spiritual one. And we'll just say, can we substitute spiritual for psychological?
All day.
Okay.
Hey, twice on Sundays.
Okay, so if we do that, right? So we'll say the physical, there's a spiritual or psychological that could be perceived to match it. Okay. But when people are in a higher physical light, right? So you see people who are famous or people can get idolized, right? There's a psychological, spiritual path that goes along with the affinity with that person. And so that person in that light can be perceived as, a God. But when you think about how someone who could believe in other people the way that they do, that comes from an emotional state. And I would say that those are frequencies at those emotional states. And so let's just say like courage, we'll say the highest state that you can have will be 1,000 frequency, like, we'll say 1,000, right? Which is enlightenment, right? And then in between enlightenment and peace is like 600, 750 or something like that. So we're talking high. Courage is at 200. And so that would I can pull up this map, of course, but, we're doing a lot of different stuff. So we'll put, pride at at least 150 as far as the frequency. Meaning that to tap into someone's frequency of pride is not that high. And so from a group think standpoint, if everyone in a group is vibrating at a certain level from a pride standpoint, it's not hard from a person vibrating higher to attack that particular foundation and get people to move on it.
What level is fear? What number is fear?
I can pull this right now, sir. And fear, if you give me a second to work with
and the reason I asked about fear is because I've noticed that tactically fear inhibits logical thinking.
For sure.
And fear inhibits critical thought, where I might make a decision out of fear that I would not make out of safety. And I mean that psychological safety, meaning that I'm not thinking about my safety at this moment. So now I can make a more informed decision. And I think that we're getting into a level of fear that has been pushed. And as fear is pushed, the vibrational level goes down across the board. Because fear makes people less likely to hear. And I think that this idea of the ears being waxed closed, meaning I can speak words to you, but you cannot hear me because there's a distortion in the way. No different, meaning you trying to look at the sun. If you try
Yes.
to look at the sun because of its brightness, you will have to humble yourself. And that means to avert your eyes. Meaning, when you, what a lot of people don't understand is that when people said your majesty or your king, your highness, what they were not saying your majesty, they were saying you are majesty. Meaning your presence. Yes, your presence, because you are here, you are majesty, you are grace, your grace. Not you, not your grace, you are grace, your grace.
Where
And
did
so
it,
the but the
when you ask that question, so I have the screen here, so I want to share it real quick to keep us in the same, light. So fear would be 100.
okay, that's low.
Okay. And so when you look at enlightenment, it's 700 to 1,000 energy log as far as vibration. And so you got peace at 6, and then you got love at 500. So you got courage down here at 200, pride at 175, and of course, fear at 100. Everything else below that. But notice these different colors. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 colors, which matches the 7 consciousness, right? Which could match up with the chakras, which they do match up with the chakras, the root, the sacral, and what's not, solar plexus, heart, And so matching those things up, understand that those vibrations exist for a reason, and when they're not in check, people can actually just be off, and people can actually get tested and triggered, right? Like right now, when we're getting out of the military and this transition, and going through that educational transition at the same time, that makes us hypersensitive to like a lot of emotions because we've experienced a lot of perspective. And so that's why I like talking about incitement leading to riot, because the riot principle, reverence. And so here we go. Here's where I start talking about my particular concept with you understand. But when I start speaking, reverence is right there at love with 500, because the riot principle the concept that I like to put forward is about the real-time emotional reaction to a situation, even though you're pissed or you're scared or whatnot. And so understanding that love would bring reverence. So you want to be reverent. And I say reverence is the deep, that deep perspective in life, in a life situation. And so for us, if we lived a lot of different perspectives, we can immediately say, oh man, I've been there, right? That's why I can now speak to this in such a way. And so, yeah, there's your scale, Doc, no agreements at all, right? This is just concepts and how a person could move forward if they want to, right? To create new neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah, and so what I like to think is that when we're trying to understand first, understanding, I think, opens a pathway neurally. It's like when you're in a class and the teacher is talking, your brain is in a different mode. Like when you're in the church and the pastor's preaching, you're not in critical thinking mode. You're in your mind is in storytelling mode. Meaning I'm not challenging anything this person is saying. See, now when I go to church and somebody say something, I'm like, what? That don't even sound right. I'll go like,
it's hard.
No, but the reason that I say that is because I understand the necessity for uniformity socially.
Yes.
Social uniformity is why we have social learning theory.
Dare I interrupt you and say the dialect of unity?
Yeah, and that's why diversity, equity, and inclusion are being attacked right now. Because, see, we have to understand this. What is the most economically powerful city in the South right now?
Atlanta.
But do you know why it's that way? Because it's diverse.
Yeah.
See, every other place around there ain't got nothing going on, but there because it's diverse. You go to these other places and you look at around the country. The most prosperous locations or institutions have diversity. They have different ideologies, different opinions, different ways of seeing the world, and they all come together and learn from each other. But we're creating a society where some people think that that is problematic, and it is problematic to the power structure. It's problematic if I create diversity of ideology with power, because then you will fight people for it. So I need those who share beliefs, ideas, and a code, which is like, there's a reason why most of the presidents were Masons. If you understand the order of the Masonic temple, how to build a man, how shall we be stood on? And they understood that we needed somebody who understood to build and destroy. We needed somebody who, we needed people, and especially at its infancy. I was telling a guy a story the other day. And I said, let me tell you a story. Because people, and this is Dr. Derek Bell, this is not my work. I have to cite the source because Dr. Derek Bell is one of our brightest, he's one of the brightest minds that we've ever produced here. Like ever. He was the first Black professor at Harvard. The first. Not to go there.
What's his name?
Dr. Derek Bell.
Yeah, right.
He went
just making sure people write that down.
Yeah.
And I'm writing it down.
He was a Harvard law student. He taught at Harvard Law School. Okay. And the thing about him was he was going to quit his job because they would not hire any Black females there. Principled man. He's not just saying like, he said, listen, I'm not going to be your token here. He said there's brilliant Black legal minds who are females out here, and you not bringing them into this school is not showing them in the highest of lights. But they're brilliant out here. And he says, I know they're brilliant because I taught some of them, and I teach at Harvard. Yeah. Let's go distortion for distortion. And before I taught at Harvard, what I did was I was a civil rights attorney who wrote and argued before the Supreme Court legal doctrine. And oh, by the way, I took critical legal studies and I founded what's called critical race theory. Dr. Derek Bell founded critical race theory. And there you go. It's his. And what he said, that racism is a permanent in America. You can't get rid of it. I accept that premise. You ain't gonna get rid of it. Nor should you try. He said, listen, the only thing we are going to do is tell our stories. He said, if you tell your story, what you will allow to do is to see that we have the same story, but you've never interwoven me into my story because the lowest vibration on your list was shame. So you don't want to tell my story because it brings shame in you. Now, listen, I don't care about that because that's your issue. If you feel shame about my story, then that is not my responsibility.
All right.
And I want to say, and the only reason that I say that is this.
I believe you. I agree.
The reason that I say that is this. 1775, the British were coming to seize the weapon depot at Concord. And a guy named Paul Revere was running through the land saying, the British are coming, the British are coming, and getting everybody aware that we need to fight, right? Right. Get a patriot, getting everybody up, right? But then it's like, well, what were Black people doing at this time? Where am I at in that story? What am I doing in this story? Now, let me tell you what I was doing, because this is a part of the story that brings shame. And I'll tell you it because they don't know it. So I'll tell you, this is shameful, but I don't think it's shameful. I think it's just a story. Like, don't worry about emotions. It's a story first.
It's a story.
It's a story. So what we were doing is the British said, if any Black person fights for us, we will give you your freedom. So, and it wasn't just one or two people ran away. Thousands did. It was such a big problem that they had to change the conscription rules temporarily in order to keep the desertions. That's what Cornwallis, when he was in Yorktown, when Cornwallis went south, he was going there to start a slave rebellion amongst the South. But the slaves were so trained so well, they did not know how to organize themselves to fight. Anyway, but the reason that's important is
I'm with you.
But that's still our story. That's still our story. So we fought. So people in our history fought that America would never be a country for our freedom. That's kind of problematic for a unification theory. That's problematic. That if you look at the
what are you saying there? So let's break this up for a second, right? So let's break this up for a second. You're saying that from the beginning, getting a certain group of people to fight, it was transactional based on the situation of being put in a corner. Yes. So there was cognitive dissonance from a certain group of people that came to do whatever they were doing. They turned to another group of people that may or may not have been a disadvantaged group and say, yes, hey, at this particular time, since all this is going on, we need you to help us fight for this land to be our land.
Yes.
Okay.
And some of them did fight. And when the British lost, those who did fight, they kept their promise. That's why there's a Black community in Canada right now. Some went to Canada, some went to the Caribbean. And so what they did was it created a problem psychologically in the mind of the founding fathers of this country, because they saw as the population of enslaved people grew, they always remained a liability to foreign aggressors, namely people who would be disaffected, who could take advantage of the way we treat them. If we keep them in bondage, we're going to create a situation where if we don't suppress them tightly, then they will be used as a domestic force against us.
Right. It could be, it's almost like a self-detonation tool.
Yes. So that's always been in the thinking of this country. It's still here today. It's still here. Like it's As that's why, but you know, first.
So can I would say that would be the difference, because since we're in what is the difference section, right? That would be the difference of why they now would hire a woman versus a man, and especially with a certain skin color, right?
Yes.
Now, because you could potentially just use that whole psychological framework, that mental model, especially for a woman of color, Black woman, whatever, insert whatever, right? Ethnicity. And you can say high education, right? But people have purpose. So you got a purpose of education, you got a purpose of having kids, you got a purpose of being an example. And so there's leverage that comes along with that, right? But you can put certain people in certain situations and they'll defend your institution because psychologically they have to. and sometimes the difference becomes like being able to make certain choices to check certain boxes to make sure from a diversity standpoint or a quota standpoint is being met. But this is where the intersectionality used to be for Black women.
Yes.
You understand? Like where we used to work and they used to be about, we had Black men working and then you had women, white women working the front, right? This is when they start first bringing in diversity. And so the only reason I say that now, Doc, is being able to, oppress people a certain type of way. I'm finding that you can put certain people in certain positions in power or not, and you can give them these transactional options to motivate them.
Yeah. And so
that's slavery too.
And so when exactly. And when you read the third stanza of the Declaration of Independence, and you realize, wait a minute, the hireling and the slave, because you got to remember at Fort Henry, when that battle was fighting, you do know that there was fear that the enslaved people in the area were going to rise up to help the British during the War of 1812. It didn't go away. The same thing happened. The same thing happened in 1812 that happened in 1776. They had the same problem. Huh?
The War of 1812.
The same thing happened. They feared the uprising and they offered the same promises. But the reason this is important is that
yes. Tell me why it's important, Doc. Tell me why.
The reason it's important is because we had a problem in this country that we didn't know how to solve. And the greatest minds of their day worked on this problem. Like like whoever you think is the smartest dude today, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and all those dudes, like they were working on this problem. And it was solved two ways. The Civil War fixed half the problem.
Right. Okay.
Because they saw that the colored people could fight. We could be troops. So they don't know that 180,000 colored troops, and I say colored troops because that's what they were called then, not to be they were called colored troops.
We're tracking.
People like cancel when he said colored. No. But so they realized 180,000 colored troops fought in the Civil War. And some of the greatest like Civil War historians have said, had it not been for the black soldiers, the North loses the war. Had it not been for the black soldiers, the North. So this whole story about, no, we fought for our own freedom, bro. Slow down, calm down. We fought for our own freedom. So let's get the narrative. Let's tell our story correctly. We per capita. Do you know statistically what that represented? That number of our population at the time, almost 40%. Could you imagine 40% of your military-aged men fighting at one time? So when you talk about love for this country, when you talk about blood shed on this soil, who shed more? And then if I told you that the KKK killed more people in America than the Nazis killed black people in World War II, you'd be like, whoa.
There's a couple of things. There's a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, I just heard some story about Superman. Maybe Superman helped with the KKK issue. Like they had they started writing a comic and they did it on the radio or something. Have you ever heard this story?
But it doesn't surprise me. But I do know, like Superman is from Cleveland all day, Glenville.
Is that a thing?
Is a thing. It was the creators of Superman comic were in Cleveland and went to Glenville High School, 1920. Okay. But the reason that's important.
The next thing, hold on. The next thing I wanted to touch on was the fact that they were selling that dream of trying to help black people or getting black people to try to be a part of something when it came like down to the wire. And this is what caucuses are, right? I'm saying the same thing is going on.
But let's talk about the period from 1865 to 1900. We had these groups called the Buffalo Soldiers.
Buffalo Soldiers.
Now, the Buffalo Soldiers did more to integrate this country than every civil rights leader combined. Okay. Because what the Buffalo Soldier did was he killed the enemy of this country. It was the Buffalo Soldier who massacred the Indians out west. We cleared Texas. We cleared New Mexico. We massacred them by the thousands. And that created a system where we became useful because they didn't want to fight the Indians. And we got the name Buffalo Soldier came from the Indians, gave us that name because the Indians said Buffalo. Exactly. So when they understood that we were good soldiers, then they said, wait a minute. We see a need for them. They can fight and die for us. And I'm okay with that. If you want to fight and die for us, I'll support that. Right. If you want to fight and die for my causes, sign up.
That's a 2-for-1.
Boom, boom. So now that is the reason that there was social mobility for black people in America who were not preachers. It was the military member who was the first black individual in America who could reach a middle-class status without being in a clerical background. Right. Okay. You couldn't go in industry. You couldn't go into agriculture. You couldn't go into these fields because they would be dominated. You'd be murdered.
That's interesting, right? So that makes me think about industry, you know, and you say clergy was the first way, then you'll say, you know, military service is the second way. What would you say the second way? Entertainment?
Well, no, so entertainment is clergy to me.
Oh wow, okay. I'll take that.
I don't separate.
Stop. Hold on. So, shit.
I don't say that disrespectfully. I say that in the sense that
hey, it's Friday. Okay, so clergy, so even playing ball, right? Playing ball and all that, that's entertainment. So black success,
music players.
Black success in industry in this world comes mainly through, because I can't think outside of this right now, mainly through clergy or military. $40 million slaves. Wow. Is that talking about?
Yeah.
Is that talking about the new like churches who get the tax write-offs?
No, that's talking about NBA players who sign a contract for $40 million, but they're slaves to the industry.
Oh yeah, no. Well, we might as well light some up. We're smoking that. We're smoking it tonight.
No, but the reason, and I say this because we've always heard glass ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
See, what we haven't heard is glass models.
Yeah.
I need a glass model. Like, I need to see somebody doing it. Like, I need to see that somebody who looks like me is there. Because
representation.
Boom, and that's what inclusion is. Inclusion is somebody looks like me there. Now, they can look like me there, but they don't have the ideology of me there.
And that's the problem with Black exceptionalism.
Boom.
Black exceptionalism is going to set you up for where now you have to meet this particular mental model. But this is
talk about that.
And this is, man, this is the problem that I have with Bad Boys. Like, that just came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, because like I love Bad Boys. I grew up on Bad Boys, right? And it's like I want them to keep going. Like Bad Boys, regardless of how ridiculous it is, it's like my Fast and the Furious. Because at the end of the day, these were always Black heroes to me in some form or fashion, right?
Yeah.
And so I get that it's like ridiculous and over the top now because you can't do anything else but be more over the top. But part of me wants that because of who they represent.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so when I think about representation, like those glass models, they exist only but for this is how it was shown how success looked like. You know what I mean, Dr. Ham?
If you can have representation but don't control your image, it doesn't matter.
That's the problem.
For example, who is the first Black woman to win an Academy Award for Best Actress?
On the spot, man, this is why I have Google, but you're going to tell me.
Oh, tell you what.
Halle Berry. Huh?
Halle Berry?
Oh, Halle Berry. You know, I thought you said Tyler Perry.
No, Monsters Ball.
I hear you, and that was because she had to get.
Now Whoopi did win for supporting actress.
Okay,
and then in the Gone with the Wind, she got a supporting actress, but it was the first. And I thought about the role she played in that movie.
You talking about Monsters Ball with Halle Berry?
Yeah,
because she had to get screwed by Billy Bob Thornton, the worst of the worst looking.
But 40 years from now, when they're saying let's look at the first Black actress who won an award, it's going to reinforce white supremacy. 40 years from now, when you're looking up that historical fact, it will reinforce the image of the prettiest Black woman of the day being abused by a drunk trucker dude who worked at a prison that every dude wanted.
Listen, okay, so at the same time, that would not be the first time a woman of that complexion with a background that had to do certain things to bring grace upon an area. Does that make sense?
No,
And so we can look at that as the principal example 40 years forward, but 40 years from when it actually happened. So for 40 years before it actually happened, we know at some point in time that was actually happening.
Like,
does that make sense?
Like Denzel won a supporting actor role for Glory. 56 Massachusetts during the Civil War.
Yeah,
right?
so he was entertainment and military.
But thing is this, he didn't get one when he played Malcolm X, which was like the greatest role of his life.
That is still the greatest.
But the reason that I bring this up is because if I only award you as I see you psychologically, see, I don't reward you for playing a black person in a role who solves the earth is about to get blown up by a missile, and the black scientist is the one who figures out how to shoot the trajectory to stop the missile. Because if I show that person, then I have a model now.
Right.
Now I have a model. Well, I can be a black rocket scientist too.
Right.
But I'm going to show.
They don't allow it.
But I'm going to show the black person on drugs, having a philanderer. I'm going to show this image because I know that 75% of white people in America do not have a black friend. And how do we know this? Is because most black people live in cities. They live in hubs, in areas that are very population dense. And most white people in America, if you look at the per capita, are rural and outside of cities. And if they're in cities with black people, they're on the north side or the west side of the city. They're not on the east and the south side of the cities.
Right.
So we're already segregated already. So we're already segregated physically.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about this. Let's break this up for a second. Why north and why east? Why north and why west?
I could tell you really quick, but this book explains it very closely. The reason that it flows that way is because resources, like a river. Let's say I'm about to pee in the stream. Yeah. Do I pee upstream or downstream?
You pee downstream.
Because if I pee, well, who lives downstream?
Well, you know who lives. We just said we live in the south and the east.
In the east. That's down because if you look at the way waterways flow in this country, anytime black people came to an area from the south to the north, because in the year 1900, 90% of all black people in America lived in like the south.
And probably South Carolina.
Yeah, that was South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. So think of it this way. When the great migration happened, the majority of black people went to cities, Chicago, Cleveland, New York, some went out west. But when they went to these cities, do you think they had the assets and the resources to go to the more plush parts of the town, or did they go into the slum outskirts of the town that had very poor resources?
Right.
And so that's what I mean. So we went to the parts of the city that were least desirable. Because property and exclusionary codes kept us from buying homes in areas that were not in these. See that red area? See that red area represents, it's called redlining. So we were redlined. And see, when you redline people, the property value goes down. And when the property value goes down, there is no incentive to upkeep the property, which leads to conditions like a slum. But they knew that. They knew it. They knew that. And now that it's happened, everybody's looking like, ooh, well, how'd that happen?
Right.
But so
they see it because they drive, everybody drives by it. But
look, have you ever seen the interway highway system in America?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the highway get off at a very plush location?
No.
Does the highway go through $1 million homes?
No, you gotta make your way back into there, buddy.
Yes. But our areas are like, boom, here you go. Boom, boom,
Oh
boom.
yeah, man. Shit. I
And,
feel like I live maybe 5 to 6 minutes from an interstate on purpose.
and the reason that is a thing is because property values are lower where they're highways. If your house is close to a highway, your property value is lower. And the people who were on the property commissions in the 60s and the 70s and 50s, do you think they were concerning themselves with the African-American property values when they were drawing these maps?
Not at all.
No, because they didn't care. And
They still don't. They still don't.
Whether they care or not isn't my point. It's just tell me the truth. Say, hey, I don't fucking care. At least I can respect that. See, if you say, look, that fucking happened, deal with it, suck it up, press on, got it. Move along. Move along.
Yeah.
But don't try to placate me and tell me that all I got to do is get a good jumper like Mike or be a rapper or a singer or something. Because
so we're going back to black exceptionalism. Okay, cool. Yeah. So well, hold on. Here's the thing. It's a never-ending cycle, right? Because people get the opportunity to go back inward and get to be selfish. And when you get to be selfish, you get to find other people who are selfish like you.
Yeah.
And when you find, hold on. Yeah. When you find people who are selfish like you can create a shield. Yeah. And if you have the power and you're on the side of power, you have the leverage to create your group that has the power and the shield to feel how you feel. You can then use that power to oppress other people. And that's what that is. And if you sit on the power base and you can be incited to bring more oppression, well, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, but I think of it this way. I look at it like this. I try to conceptualize a framework that creates a safe space for people to not I want people to feel like you can engage in levels of conversation that will make you uncomfortable in a safe space. You know what I mean? Like a non-attributive environment. I'll give you an example.
Non-attributional.
Yeah. For example, I'll give you an example. I'm talking to someone and they're telling me how they didn't understand why certain things were offensive to Black people because when they grew up, they never discussed these things in their home. Like there was things they didn't discuss, like black hair, or like they just didn't discuss. So if you see something, if you go to the zoo and you see something that looks exotic, you're gonna want to look at it because it looks different.
Correct.
And so you're gonna get stared at, because one of these things is not like the other. Like, wait a minute, this person here is like 6'8". Everybody's gonna look at him because they're gonna be drawn to them. And so for a lot of times in this country, what happened was this: if a Black person needed to interact with a white person for any reason, it was and to be initiated at the behest of the white person first. You do not initiate a conversation unless you have an intermediary to speak for you. You don't speak to these people directly, but it creates a reverential environment. Because I told you, one of your principles of SALT is reverence, correct?
Yes.
My
definition of reverence.
Yeah. And so in a reverential environment, when you go before a majesty or a magistrate, it's to be contrite. It's to be humble. You don't go in front of the person who controls your life and talk crazy to them. Because if that person can end your life, you probably want to use some softer words.
That's respecting your resources, sir.
But it's a form of reverence. It's a form of reverence because you can get reverence by fear.
Yes,
you can get reverence by fear, or you can get reverence by love. I mean, however you want to get it.
Yeah.
But I've learned this is that what I've seen happen is that in the safe space that is not attributive, it creates vulnerability. it creates vulnerability. And in
which is a weakness.
Well, it can be, because
it's the duality. No, we're going back to duality. I have now found that weakness and vulnerability sit on the same plane.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
But I can conceptualize a framework where I can see vulnerability
as a strength.
No, because what I say is that if I'm looking at someone and I see that they are vulnerable and I don't want to be gentle, a riot will ensue. If I see you being vulnerable and I don't become gentle to your vulnerability or your fragility or whatever words you want to use or whatever, if I don't become that, it can invoke in you for protection a riot on me. You've been incited now. You've been incited because you come to me prostrate and I stepped on you. Now you pissed. You're like, wait a minute, I'm already at my lowest position of surrender and you're going to step on me? And
that's why riot, my conceptual framework, is supposed to make you say, okay, I've been stepped on, I'm hurt. Now, I could hurt somebody back, but reverence for the situation, meaning respect in the perspective, because if you need to kill that person, you need to do it, but you need to know why. You know what I mean? Like have respect for the perspective that this person in this situation is a threat to the situation and there's nothing else that you can do but put this person down. But the reverence is understanding why you have to do it. Intentionally, you're going to do it.
But what I mean? How quickly or how efficiently you can recognize a vulnerability in real time, because some people can distort their vulnerability and make you think it's a strength when it's not. It's really a weakness. And then you can push that and they're like, oh, I see. I can blow that little straw man away. I can blow that straw man that you picked up to protect your vulnerability,
that's everybody. I'm not going to make this blatant statement right now, but that is the study going on right now. I would address the whole issue as most people are dealing with imposter syndrome, because
what does it mean?
It means that we're all putting on whatever face we need to face the next situation. And some people, when I say some people have figured it out. This is why we're talking about the neuro-linguistic programming, because you can understand in certain frameworks how to operate. You understand these mental models where you have to exist, and these become your achieved positions or your ascribed positions where you learn how to do it. But you understand in a system how to be successful enough to keep a certain type of motion. And then certain people can see that, but at the same time, you have to understand what you're doing, because you can only keep up the fraud for so long, because time will eventually expose all. That's what the entropy is about. Entropy, it regardless of how small it starts, eventually it will come to light, right? And so people want to be the best that they can for as long as they can, and if you do it by yourself, that's amazing. If you do it with help, that's great that you have it. But what I'm saying is everybody wants to be as strong as they think that they need to be who they feel like they want to be based on their socialization. And so as you admit your energy into the world and vibrate, you're showing your vibration, just like we showed on this little map of consciousness.
Yeah. The reason you know what I mean? The reason I say this, that the term imposter syndrome was coined in 1978. Now, I think about the term as I've reconceptualized it, because I think of it differently now, because I think the term was invented by clinical psychologists, right?
Time out.
Yeah.
I already don't agree with the way diagnoses have gone for psychology since I have now taken on the 2021 APA apology, but even before then. So boom, I'm with you.
And the reason that I say this is because theory exists to explain phenomenon. So to your point, you know, I'm a English literature by nature. So I'll go back to Shakespeare for a minute. And Shakespeare says that the world is a stage. And every time we step outside, we play our parts. Meaning like we're on a stage, we're in a production. The life is a cast. Some people say assimilation or whatever you want to call it. For the same, whatever. Matrix, simulation, whatever. But it exists to explain the same phenomenon. Yeah. So I don't get caught up in language because it's the same thing. It's principle. And how you perceive the world. And the reason that I say imposter syndrome, it started when people who were traditionally unqualified started to become qualified, would judge themselves as not being good enough because they would be in social environments where nobody would esteem them because of their credential. No one would say, hey, great job. They would just say like, they would look at you like, you're cheating on somebody's work.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm talking about. When I made a blanket statement, I said most people would be struggling from imposter syndrome because in this day and age, we know that someone is secretly, they've made it transactional enough that it feels like everybody's coming for your spot, right? And then won't give you what they is anybody above and below because we have been put in a competitive nature. So if me and you didn't vibrate to a certain way, we could be pitted against each other to be like, oh, who's whatever, right? Like Dr. Ham sounds so much more prolific than Kalvin because Kalvin's so but we know our location and we know who we are.
But see, the thing is this, I know.
What could somebody at this point?
It's like this.
I'm saying, what could somebody tell us?
No, and I hear you. Like, but I conceptualize differently when I don't think about how people feel about it.
Correct.
So when I say this, that I don't know like if the word choice is good, but I know this. When I have something to say, I have a process of validating it that can withstand scrutiny. Like I can defend it. Like I can defend it, but I can defend it in a way that is intricate to the defense it needs to be, based on the level of offense. Like, for example, if you're playing basketball with somebody who is, they say 5'1" and got 2-inch vertical and you're 6'8", you might beat them in basketball because you have an advantage in height and you have an advantage in just maybe skill. What I think happens in life is we get advantages throughout our lives. We get military, we get good parents is an advantage. Having parents that take care of you is a great advantage. Having a good school system is an advantage. It's not a predictor, it's an advantage. And those advantages over time multiply. And as I multiply my advantages, it creates more options for me. Because I multiply my advantages or I've taken advantage of them. And we all know what happens when advantage and hard work comes together. The intersectionality of advantage and hard work is greatness. And
that's luck. That's luck.
And I tell you this, man, when I watched that movie Oppenheimer and I saw how white scholarship is treated, when I saw the deference, when I saw the reverence, when I saw the ego stroking, and I saw it's just like, oh my God, like this is like softcore pornography.
That's what you wanted. That's what you want for yourself, right?
No, that's the beauty of it. See, the thing is this: when I'm learning, is that you can grow up or out. See, if you go up, you'll be visible, you'll be a celebrity, you'll be famous, you'll be rich, but you'll operate in a space where not many can reach you. Because the higher you go, the more isolated you become. You become Icarus. You become Icarus. Oppenheimer dealt with that his whole life. He says, now I have become death, destroyer of worlds, because he theorized that by splitting the atom, we could ignite the atmosphere and end Earth. And I would be the one with the knowledge of intersectionality to bring the physicists, to bring the chemists, to bring the... I brought it together and I did it. And had I had not done it, it might have still been done, but now I know I played it. So I have a moral responsibility of that, because I did not set out with the intent of being able to destroy the world, but my research led me to calculate it's a probability. Now, we all have the ability to destroy worlds too. We can destroy worlds with our words. You can use your words in a destructive manner to destroy someone's whole world. From the foundation, I'm talking about, to obliteration, to they don't even want to come out their house no more. like they have been hermitified, like they want to be in the house. Yeah. And they can't go nowhere because they don't want to talk to people, because their world is messed up. You scrambled them like some eggs.
Yeah. Because
you took their premises and you accepted them, and you took their own premises to a place they could not go. A logical conclusion. Because see, I am not concerned with your premise. Is your conclusion logical following it?
Man, you are just beating me up here, man, because you just sound like what I've been doing on accident recently, because I don't like to use my words in a way that can, but sometimes you get to this point, man, where you just cannot accept the shit that people are telling you anymore, because they want you to be a part of it, and you cannot do it. You just can't do it.
You riot.
You just can't do it. You riot, but you got to riot in a certain way.
See, what I'm learning is this. I learn over time. There's an exchange in language, meaning like, as I understand people better, I know that sometimes I am induced or aroused to bring cognitive dissonance for the purpose of learning. Now, this is dangerous because you operate at the Imperium level.
Oh,
you
book tip.
Oh no, we talked about last week. I was saying this Imperium.
It don't matter.
No, but the reason that it's important is because what you are doing is this. You are saying, whether you recognize it or not, you may not. But what you're saying is, I have created myself as the ethical authority. I am now the authority ethically, because I have determined it is now time for me to induce dissonance, because you're saying statements that are not harmonious.
All right. So can I grab this for a 30-second final thought?
Kill.
All right. So I would take that and I would say, yeah, you try to be harmonious in something that makes sense, that's logical or rational. Yeah. And you try to do this in concert with people, because you're sitting up here trying to figure it out how to do it by yourself. And then once you kind of master that, you bring other people in, which is more entropy, but you try to be selfless, because that is actually, I think, what the goal is in life. Not to be selfish, but to be selfless. And shedding enlightenment is somewhat selfless, right? To help people see life once you found it to be different. And we have ways to find studies that show, hey, this is showing us how to do this differently. So we should take that. But it gets to a point where you get to that top, because you can grow outward or upward, and you get upward enough where you're seeing certain things and you're talking to people who can't see it, and you're like, listen, I can see this and I need you to understand it. And you would love to have the credibility to continue and to motivate people. But that's where the incitement comes from. Like, you want to bring on cognitive dissonance because you tried every other way to get them to see it, or you think you have.
So I would only interject, you know me, I sometimes I think that when people discredit things, they don't do it sometimes in concert with itself. Like,
it's not critical thinking. They do not practice critical thinking.
There's a passage that's in the Bible that I like, and it says this. It says, in many counselors there is safety. In many counselors. So essentially, the more counsel you have, the better decisions you can make. All right. The only problem that a lot of people run into is they don't know how to discern the counsel quickly.
Too much bad counsel.
Yes. You can be inundated with people who don't know what they're talking about. And now you're not a good counselor. But in many, and you know what the word many in the Greek means? The word many is the word that we get for population. The Greek word for many is populus. Okay. That's where we get the English word population from. Right. So in many counselors, what they're saying is not people. In many counselors, meaning in the populace, meaning there's a fallacy of appeal to the majority. Okay. It's a fallacy to say that you've had an argument before with somebody and they'd be like, well, most people think like I think. And you're like, wait a minute, how'd you come to that conclusion, sir or ma'am? Did you survey the entire United States of America and they said what you said? No, you didn't do that.
Well, what people
you used maybe intuition. You may have used what you've read. You may have correlated, quantified some data. But when you make the argument in real time, it gives false credibility to your argument because you're appealing to data that you cannot recall right now. See, if I'm having a discussion with you, I need to be able to bring up the data real time. I can't be like, well, let me go look it up. Let me go find it out. No, I need to have the data present. Because if I don't have it present, they're going to know that I'm creating a space for the distortion. And let me tell you, this is what happens. When I communicate to you, before you say anything back to me, when you receive that message, in the time of your response is the window for the distortion. The window. And what I'm learning is that the quicker the window is addressed, the less time they thought about what I said.
Yeah.
And it's powerful because you'll see people in real time. You will give them a key. You give them a key.
Yeah, no.
And then what they can do is they can take the key you gave them and unlock something that opens a door past the distortion. Now, you can only give them the key.
Right.
You can't go unlock nothing.
Right.
But when people are honest and vulnerable in real time, you can see it unlock instantly. Like,
correct. Boom. Yeah, and you see the light go off, like you like the door open is like, yes, let's go through it.
Or no. See, you're induced to go through it because it's open. See, that's not the time to go through it. See, you have to stop when the door opens, because if you go too quickly too soon, you won't be able to rebalance it. So the door opens, but if you can't rebalance it in real time, because they may be afraid, because the door may be open and seriously, the door may be open at a high vibrational level, and then fear comes in because it's a new door. But
that's all perceived. Even if you step in there, the thought was it could or it couldn't be, but more often than not, depending on who you're talking to.
No,
right?
The
thought is that, but what's behind the door is not as scary as you think it is, but going through the door is scary.
No, what I mean is that when the door opens up, there can be a myriad of emotions.
Right.
I don't know what. See, my point is, you don't know what emotion you're going to get until it's time.
That you can predict the emotion based on the person because they have a predetermined way that they always address something.
Yes,
unless they become open.
You just said you can predict the emotion. Now, let me tell you the problem with that. Let me tell you the problem with predicting emotions. Because listen, if you're predicting an emotion, you're not in the moment. Because if you're in the moment, we don't predict emotions in the moment. We don't.
This is fine. Two things. Okay, so here's the thing. We can predict an emotion right now and then go try this and not be predicting the emotion. We're waiting on it.
No, okay. I think I know what the issue is. We can make an assumption.
Of course.
Because you said prediction. And I think of it like gambling. I don't want to gamble with anybody's emotions because emotion can get you shot. So I don't want to predict anything emotionally because if I try to predict your emotions, it might backfire on me, and it could create a void or a gap. Because although the door or the window came on, what you're realizing is that you are a component and a piece. Somebody else opened another door a year ago. Right. Somebody else has been saying the same thing you've been saying. Now all of a sudden. Boom, boom. It's like, so what I'm learning though, is that when it happens, the individuals who are serious, who are deliberate, the critical thinker will stop to reflect and examine. They will stop. They will reflect, maybe assess, and examine, because I am the first to tell you, I've read a book sometimes where I've read a sentence and I've had to just stop reading it. Yeah. The sentence was so heavy, I had to just stop and be like, I can't go any further. I'm going to just wrestle with that for a couple of days because I want to understand. I don't want to go through the door yet because I'm like, that right there was enough. And I don't want to be the person to tell somebody was enough, because I've seen people that all they needed was to be pointed in the right direction, and then you just get out the way. They'll do the rest, because all they it was just a little bit of like, okay, boom, bam, boom, and then they running faster than you is. You like, slow down. And see, that's my concern when you talk about incitement. And I know we're going a little extra. I apologize.
No, man. Hey, you deserve it.
But when you talked about incitement and how to make people riot, I think you just said how to do it. It's predicting the emotion based on externalities. Like, there are many things happening at once.
For the record, I do know how to incite a riot. Yes. Continue.
Yeah. No, but
I was trying to tell you, but I wasn't trying to tell. I'm saying you understand.
No, I'm saying, but this would be how you would do it. Though. Like, I mean, this is a lot.
Because you understand groupthink. If you want to start a riot, it would take a group. You understand groupthink. You understand the environmental externalities. You understand the moral foundations to which that group operates. You understand that all you need is pride. And then once you take it at a pride, you can enter a courage level, and all you do is keep them between pride and courage for what you needed for inclusion. And then when you want to piss them off, you take them down to fear and you make them think about shame. These are all what we're talking about. Yes.
And so when you said that, I thought about this. There was a guy who was just caught. He was trying to plan a race war in America. I don't know if you saw this on the news in Atlanta. He's gonna go to a concert, a rap concert, I think a concert, and shoot up black people. And he had planned it out to put Confederate flags on there because he essentially wants to start a race war. This is the same thing that Dylan Roof wanted to do. Right. Peyton in Buffalo shot those people. And what was interesting is the guy was 58 years old. Usually this violence has been around the younger age. As the older people indicates an acceleration. It indicates an acceleration as older people are doing it.
Right.
And I'll leave it at that, because I want people to be mindful of the times we are in, because I don't feel like people are being prepared. I think that's why we're the lighthouse, because we're trying to prepare people for the times we're in. And you're going to be able to need to see through distortions quickly.
Right.
Because you're going to have to make decisions about allies, about what groups do I want to be in? You know, what groups do I don't want to be in?
Yeah.
Or who do I want to be associated with, even though I don't want to be anybody's group? Because I tell you this, man, the last election, 100 million people didn't vote who could have voted. So the largest group in this country, the largest political group is I don't care, or I whatever. And that is very telling.
Yeah.
that the candidate who wins will not have the most votes.
Well, so something, you know, as we, because, you know, we can continue to go. I think for what it's worth, you know, for subscribers to know, you and I can spend a decent amount of time talking on this or not. So with that, hold on. Let's do this, Doc. Let's get into our money tip and book tip thing. So you got the book. What book? You showed the color. Did you show that color? What'd you say? The Color of Law?
Oh, I got a bunch of books, man.
I know, but you just showed the Color of Law. I don't think you've ever showcased that one. And I think it would be a good one. So
okay. You know, the reason these books are important, you see the guy's name on there, Richard Rothenstein.
Jewish?
I think so. But the reason this is important, I noticed that when white scholarship attacks Black issues, sometimes it can be condescending. It can be condescending. And this book is not. This book is expository, and it explains. See, there's a myth in American history that persists today, and this book exposes it. And that's the myth that America is only segregated because Black people want to live around other Black people, and white people just want to live around white people. Right. That's a myth that has been perpetuated, and not what's really going on. And this book exposes how it happened, the laws, the years, the time frames, and it goes into the decisions that were made at the federal level. And when people talk about reparations, what they don't understand is that there was federal policy, not just state issues, federal policy that certain loans could only be given to certain people, which is by definition discrimination. So this book explains that. Money tip.
I can do the money tip. I can do the money tip if you did the book tip. I feel like we can split it.
Go ahead.
A money tip for right now. Yeah. So this will require people paying attention. So I dropped a high yield savings account on my Facebook account for people to grab. Right. It's a free one, and it's a 4.29 annual percentage rating. But I would also add, they're not a sponsor yet. I should talk to them. But they also have Capital One also has a checking account where if you have 2 direct deposits over $500, you can get $250.
Okay.
So I just wanted to add that on. You got to find a little money here and there. And of course, that high yield savings account is important because a lot of people don't have it, and you've been told to have these savings for emergencies. That's fine, but why you got to be so damn scary, man? Everything's a damn emergency, ain't it? If you're properly prepared, most things aren't emergencies, but we understand that. Yeah. And when I say we as people, I'm not trying to say we don't have emergencies, but I'm saying don't let that be the only thing that you save for. And if that is, let it be in an account that makes you money, man. Let the money start making the money for you.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the money tip for me, Doc. So we got 50 seconds until it's an hour and 15 minutes. Close it out, Doc.
No, man. It's always a pleasure. As we sharpen each other as iron sharpens iron. Shall one brethren sharpen the countenance of another. I appreciate the time. Always insightful, man. I think it's important to bring a perspective that is non-attributive, and I think ultimately it's a growth thing. And I think that as the lighthouse continues to shine bright, that your platform will grow, because as times get darker, people need light, and it becomes easier to see. So I appreciate you all day.
And I appreciate you. And as we wrap, this is, the Lighthouse Series is part of my podcast channel, Objectively Aggressive Podcast Presents, podcast with a K. But this Lighthouse Series is dedicated to make sure people can see things that aren't necessarily illuminating right now. And, from my particular framework, potential and I don't like to talk about salt like that because it exists in the background. But, I look at light. I look at life. I look at leadership. I look at love. I look at it all differently. And then I look at it all the same. It's the systems thinking for me, Doc. And I can see the principles on all of it. That's why I'm starting to talk about it. And now we got a new way to talk about psychology, because they done messed around and told us that they messed it up. So, hey,
that could be our next episode right there.
Next episode, what is it? What is it?
Hey, that could be next episode right there, man.
What's the next episode? How they messed up psychology?
No. So
we're locking it in. No, don't do it. What's the next episode?
We can talk about it, but I don't want to use the idea that it was messed up, because it wasn't messed up. It was deliberate. It was intentional, and it was pervasive, and it still is. And I
want to say that it was messed up because it came from a consciousness of people who, even if they knew better, I mean, here's the thing, man. When you research what a Neanderthal is, okay, and who comes close. Stop it. Anyway, we're out here, man. So the next
we'll
podcast,
we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out, people. Just know that at the end of the day, we can do this until we don't want to. We just choose. Hey,
we should bring on a psychologist too. I would love to bring on a psychologist.
I would love to too. I just need them to not get eaten alive up here with any type of.
No, we don't know. We here to become better. See, if it's perspective first. See, no matter if I agree or disagree with anybody, I want to make your argument better.
Like, it wouldn't be us. It wouldn't be us. We would be asking certain questions. I feel like we could get people on here. Of course, we're not saying no one could come on here. I'm just saying.
No, I'm just saying. I think that it would be a perspective that, like, Dr. Frances Quest Wilson, like, she might mess us. She might mess us both up.
I'm here for it. Huh? I'm here for the correction, sir.
Hey, I want to know, because I noticed that when you start to talk about psychology in this country, and there's certain credentials you don't have, which is a distortion, it creates, I think, a space for, I would say, for more speculation. Because, like I said,
speculation is such a safe word, man.
No, I mean, I know, but I say that because I think about psychology is the one equilibrium that you won't know you didn't, like, you won't know you messed up the balance.
In real time, you cannot quantify how much that balance is messed up, because
you can't.
And so here we go. People, we need to understand this, because we're gonna go back to the Tower of Babel, right? Our words can create energy, and regardless of how we think it might not affect people, or we want to actually affect people, we need to be very careful in how we understand how our words affect people's vibration, consciously or unconsciously. And so be aware, right? Be aware. That's the first stage. Clarity is the second. Creation is the third, because when you're being intentional, right, you get to be your clarity comes through creation, right? And then it's about a balance.
And like medication, some people have to be taken in doses.
That's me.
Five.
Hey, and that's it, Doc. We're out 120 minutes because we'll be back, people,
all day
out here.
All right.
Hey, I'm gonna roll this commercial because my management says I have to, and then we'll be out here.
Mark one.
All right. So Doc, we're gonna close this out. Stick around for part 2, and everyone out there in the metaverse, peace.